All right, good news. Don is walking back into the room. The bar has advanced. We are go for lunch.
All right. Good evening. Welcome to the February 24th, 2021 Henrietta Town Board meeting. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley.
Here.
Councilmember Stafford.
Here.
Councilmember Safranek.
Here.
Councilmember Bolsner.
Here.
Supervisor Schultz.
Here. We'll begin tonight with a silent prayer, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
Mr. Supervisor, I make a motion to approve the February 10th, 2021 Town Board meeting.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley.
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford.
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek.
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Excuse me. First up, we have a public hearing. It is a follow-on meeting to the special use permit application 2020-028 from Imbergia Brothers Holding, FSI Construction, to construct a plus or minus 200,000 square foot distribution building on a portion of the former Delphi complex and seek a review. So we had this, the initial meeting was last year, or was it the beginning of this year? Boy, I'm losing track. Anyway, previously, and got a lot of good feedback from residents. We, including as well, folks who own historic properties and then the Historic Site Committee as well. We updated our town code to include additional buffering around historic properties. One of the historic properties that had not previously been registered as a historic property has since done so, so they will also enjoy the additional protections in that regards. In bringing these concerns and stuff to the FSI Construction, they have changed their plans around to meet a lot of what we discussed. So some of the notable changes, they shifted ponds and berms around so that they are not removing any of the existing trees along the edges of the property, as those provide screening. You know, they're mature trees and provide good screening for the existing historic properties. They've pulled the whole development back so that the first parking lot is beyond that 150-foot expanded buffer that we created for the historic properties. And if I remember the numbers, and Jess and Frank will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's over 200 feet from the properties to the building itself. So, you know, they, in addition, they lowered the height of the building. And we asked them to provide a couple cross-section cut-throughs so that we could see how the building sits in relation to the surrounding terrain. Most notably, the residents along Erie Station Road did not want to be facing a large, you know, monolithic side of a building. In fact, they would prefer to continue to have their view of downtown. With the way this sits, they will be below that. When we got this plan, it shows an elevated berm along Erie Station Road. I approached Frank Imburgia about whether he would consider modifying the height of that berm and or the foliage on it. We'd want it tall enough so that you don't see the roof components from the side of the road, but so that the people across the street on their hill can still see over the top of it. Frank was basically, I'll build it whatever height you want it. So, I would like to thank FSI for their willingness to continually adapt this plan to meet the concerns of the town and its residents. One other thing I'll note, in the original plans, there was a connection from the parking lot of this building to the exit out onto Erie Station Road. We were concerned that there would be people who, there's a sort of a natural human instinct, if you will, to get out of the parking complex and onto roads and then go where you're going from there. And so our fear was if that connection was made, there'd be people who go out to Erie Station, head west, and go through the historic intersection for the West Hamlet. So they actually removed that road. They still have the road still there, or the exit onto Erie Station is still there, but the direct connect is not. So if somebody really needs to go out that direction, let's say somebody lives on Middle Road and working at this location, they can still go that way. But it doesn't encourage the quick exit out that way. They have to essentially go around the old Delphi building. And so almost all the traffic, if you look where the exit from the parking lot is, it comes right out at the 3500 or 5500 West Henrietta Road entrance. And so again, that should keep as much traffic as possible out of the historic site, which again was comments we received from the Historic Site Committee as well as neighbors. And then they also received feedback from Monroe County suggesting that they add an additional turn lane for the exit. And so they've done that as well. So I've probably stolen some of Jess's thunder, but I just wanted to point out that again, they have been extremely responsive and adjusting the plans to fit. I did leave one off. I had also asked our town historian to provide some examples and or materials for use on the facade that does face the street, so that it would be consistent with the historic period of the West Hamlet. And again, the developer has agreed to put something together. We won't see that exactly tonight, but what we will be doing when we ultimately do this from a seeker standpoint, we will have, like we've done with other projects, we will put conditions that we want the planning board to meet as part of their site plan approval, because the building facades, all that stuff isn't done here, that's done at the planning board. But again, as part of the seeker process, we'll be putting conditions that we want to see met when the site plan approval is done. So that's where we sit, and I'll hand it over to Jess and Frank.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. And yes, you did include a lot of points that we planned on including this evening, but I think the primary point here is FSI and Mr. Imburgia have, really worked with the town and, also the residents based on comments that were made since the previous meeting, and certainly will continue to do that. I believe both Frank and Pastor are working with Frank have a pretty long and successful track record with the town in terms of making those commitments and following through with them. Again, it is a 40-acre site. We are proposing a 200,000 square foot building that has both a light manufacturing component and a distribution component. It is in the industrial with specific zone. I think it's important to point out that if we were proposing, research within this building, which could have the same building size, it could actually be twice the size of what it currently is. It could have more parking and the same amount of loading docks, but if it just happened to have research in it, then we wouldn't require the special use permit. We would go straight for site plan approval. In this case, we are proposing a much smaller building than what could potentially be allowed there. The reason why I say that is we're proposing 63% green space on this project, which is an extraordinarily high number for development in an industrial district. I believe the town standard is 25% green space, and that's typically what you might see. So we are well in excess of twice the typical green space requirement. Just to give some context on the size of the building as it relates to the parcel itself. When we did appear before the board a couple months or so ago, admittedly, we were a bit underprepared. At that point, I think we mutually decided that we would still appear and take comments in from residents and other people in the project area. There was a lot of concerns, but I'm glad we did have that meeting because it did inform us, the different items that we would need to address. And there's really 4 items in terms of significance, and maybe you have more, Mr. Supervisor, as it relates to seeker that I did want to cover, most of which you have already touched on. One of those is traffic. Traffic and traffic flow is also part of the special use permit standards that the town board has to consider when considering a special use permit in this zoning district or any other zoning district. We've gone through a very thorough traffic review. Our traffic study has been reviewed and modified. It's been reviewed by the New York State DOT. It's been reviewed by the county DOT. It's been reviewed by the town's independent traffic consultant. It's also even been reviewed by one of the neighbors in the area, had a third-party consultant review it and offer their comments. Essentially, the findings state in the county's letter that there would be no significant impact. The state talks about no further mitigation being required. And then most recently, the county issued a response to the independent study that was performed by a separate consultant that, although there was some comments that had merit, none of those comments would effectively change the results of the study. So I don't mean to brush over it, but the traffic has been reviewed at length. I do agree with the point that you made earlier, which is by us not connecting to the Erie Station Road intersection, that certainly significantly reduces the amount of potential traffic that could be entering onto Erie Station and then driving in front of some of those single-family residences, and really keeps everybody going north on West Henrietta Road. The other significant discussion item was the potential visual impact, and we've made some significant changes there. First, our previous proposal contemplated a 50-foot building, which would have required a second special use permit. That has since been modified so that we are not exceeding the height limitation in this particular zoning district. So we are no longer asking for that special use permit. So that will certainly help to a degree. We've also completely changed the footprint of the building. We've both changed it in terms of its geometry, and we've also moved it further east. So I believe you mentioned 200 feet from the property line where the historic house is to our building. Our building is actually 350 feet from that property line. So it's a very significant setback. Our parking area is 225 feet from that property corner. So we're providing 70 feet more than the new enhanced buffer. So we had a regular buffer, the town enhanced it, and on top of that, we went an additional 75 feet. On top of that, we are showing that existing significant stand of trees, as I believe you mentioned, Mr. Supervisor, will not be touched or impacted by our project. So we will not be removing any existing vegetation. But from that existing stand of trees, we will be constructing that landscape berm, which wraps essentially the entire west and south side of the building. And as mentioned earlier, we'll continue to work with the town to make sure that the height of that berm, the species selection, the foliage, limits the impact from the project, but at the same time, doesn't block the views of homes in that area. I have driven that area several times recently, specifically as it relates to this project. And there are 4 or 5 homes that do have that downtown view up to the kind of northeast, and certainly we wouldn't want to impact that. And then lastly, and potentially most significantly, we are proposing that the building elevation would be designed at a elevation such that the top of the roof would be at an elevation that would be similar to the road grade on Erie Station Road, within 5 to 6 feet or so. So as you're driving down Erie Station Road and you look out to the north, you're not going to see a 40-foot tall building. You're going to see the top of a roof of a 40-foot tall building, because that building is going to be set well down into the grade. The excavations that are part of general site preparation will be used to help construct the berms that we mentioned earlier, and that's how we're going to address the cut and fill. And then, as mentioned, all of this is shown on documents that have been submitted to the town and are on file for public review. Stormwater is always a significant one. We do have plenty of space to provide stormwater management. Of course, that's the case with us providing 63% green space. We have ample opportunity to provide more than what would even be required by the DEC for stormwater management. And just the sheer fact of having 63% green space limits the amount of stormwater management we actually have to provide if you were to compare that to a full built out industrial type project. And then, as I've already mentioned, the historic nature of not just the building that's immediately adjacent to us, but some of the other buildings that are kind of right in this node where West Henrietta Road meets Erie Station Road, you know, the maintaining the existing vegetation, the berms, the design elevation of the building, just moving the building over 100 feet to the east away from those properties, the redesign of the parking lot so that we don't have significant vehicles over there like we had in our previous design. You know, we've pretty much, for lack of a better term, pulled out all the stops to maximize the impact that our project might have. We can't move it any further east because there's a property line there that separates this 40 acres from the existing Delphi building. And we can't really move it any lower without creating significant grade issues with Erie Station Road and Ever. So we're as far east as possible. We're as low in elevation as possible. We're providing as much screening as possible. We've decreased the size of the building from 50 feet to 40 feet and really, I think, done everything that's reasonable in terms of mitigating impact under the umbrella of seeker. And then just to reiterate, you know, have a clean bill of health, if you will, from on our traffic study and the potential traffic impact from not just one entity, but 3 different professional design firms who reviewed our study. And then lastly, I will again reference the special use permit standards, which are considered. I won't go through them in detail. That has been previously submitted and is on file. But some things to highlight out of those special use permit standards is, for starters, we don't need any variances. You know, that's one of them that's talked about. We are similar to what would be allowed as of right. In fact, as I mentioned earlier, we're much smaller than what could be allowed as of right if we were just under the term of research. There could be a 400,000 square foot building there. We're, of course, much smaller than that. We don't have any hazardous materials. We're not going to create any waste or noise or anything that would have an ongoing significant impact, you know, to the neighboring community other than, you know, standard truck traffic and cars and that type of thing. And our ability to provide screening, no stormwater impact, you know, all those things fit under those special use permit standards, which we believe we are complying with all of them. So with that said, it's a pretty drastic change from the last time we were here. And as I mentioned earlier, we'll continue to work with both this board and then eventually the planning board as part of the site plan review as we navigate our way through this process.
Thank you. Just a couple of things. We did note there was, if you could fix the EAF, it said it didn't have the box check for excavation. It's kind of under the heading of mining, but it does also include in there a significant amount of excavation. And because you're setting the building down, that box should really be checked. So if you could.
Yeah, we'll check it. I believe the reason why it wasn't originally checked is because there's a caveat for general site preparation, but due to the excavation, we're happy to check it.
Yeah.
Just to ensure that the town is in fact acknowledging the hard look for seeker.
Right. You know, in terms of, my understanding is that's the material you're going to then use to make the berm, right? So there's not necessarily material being taken away or brought to the site. It's essentially being relocated on site, correct?
That's the intent.
Yep. One of the things I'll note is in talking with a couple of the historic homeowners as well as the church, you know, some of the historic buildings are actually you know, they're not homes anymore, or they never were. For instance, the First Baptist Church. When you do your plan, in addition to obviously controlling your own runoff, if you could do the design to try to draw water away from their foundations, that would be great. I know there are some. It's a problem in all of Henrietta with our clay soil. You know, it traps the water underneath, brings it to your foundation, traps it there against your foundation, and can lead to deterioration. So, you know, I see the one pond there, depending on how that is relative to the surrounding elevation. if you could, like I said, design it such that it's drawing the water away from the east as well.
No, absolutely. And, right now, based on the existing topography, there's a high point kind of in the middle of the parcel. So there's a significant amount of existing drainage that runs towards those properties. Where that pond is and the way that the site will be graded will effectively cut all that off, which I think will be a significant improvement. And then we'll also look for opportunities, make sure our pond is lower than those properties so that water drains
Exactly,
back
that's
towards
what I'm
us.
looking for.
And we'll probably potentially intercept any old drainage tile, which could also be conveying water in their direction.
And the other thing, looking at it too, so then like, I assume if I was reading your elevation plan correctly, your property is more going to sheet to the northwest to that pond out there?
Correct.
Okay. Other questions?
I have a few.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mike.
Go, Rob.
No, go ahead.
Oh.
They're like those chipmunks in the cartoons.
On the EAF, well, first thing, do you have a tenant for it? Do you have a
You just
tenant?
had to laugh, didn't you?
I'm working with a couple different tenants right now.
Okay, and that kind of, if you don't know who the tenant is, how do you know the hours that's on your EAF? How do you know how much truck traffic will be in there, how much car traffic?
Yeah, regardless of the tenant, both FSI and Passero have done a number of these light manufacturing distribution facilities so that we know essentially what the thresholds are in terms of some that generate a low amount of traffic and some that generate a high amount of traffic. So we've erred and cautioned on the higher side to make sure that we are being conservative. The same thing goes for the way that we did our background conditions for our traffic study. And on top of that, the hours of operations for these types of facilities are relatively standard. And I don't think that we're dealing with anyone that would have obscure hours of operation.
So to answer your question, Mike, this is actually routine. When you look at, for instance, Olive Wiregrass, when they got the approval for that, there were no tenants at all. And almost every park that goes in, they don't have tenants yet when they're doing industrial sites. So what happens is they set the parameters, and the tenant that they bring in has to fit within that parameter or less. If you do seeker for 1,000 units, whatever it is, right? I can have 900, I can have 600, I can't have 1,010. So they basically looked and said, from all the tenants that they're courting, here are the maximum amounts that we could ever see. And if somebody comes in higher than that, then they're not going to be able to do them, or they would have to start the seeker process all over again.
And then I saw 20 to 30 trucks a day with 28 docks. Kind of thought that was, somebody who worked on a dock years and years ago and would, could unload a truck in a half hour, and we could have a lot more truck, why do you have 28 docks if you're only expecting at maximum 30 trucks a day?
Some trucks come in and stay for the day, and then other trucks leave. And for the light manufacturing component, there's some in and out during the day.
So just to be clear, what they're looking for a special use permit is a light manufacturing with distribution center. So it's not like it's not like an Amazon warehouse where all it is trucks in, trucks out, trucks in, trucks out. But because again, where they're manufactured, they're loading up the trucks and then off they go with the goods and or trucks bringing in the raw materials.
Correct.
Okay, in here it didn't say light manufacturing, it said warehouse and distribution center, so.
I apologize, we've refined that. Again, that was part of as this thing has evolved. We moved away from just a pure warehousing. So it's light manufacturing and distribution center.
Certainly, they will warehouse some stuff at times.
Right.
Right, I mean, if you manufacture stuff, you've got a warehouse, I realize that, but there was no.
We do these facilities like this in the Midwest and in, the Northeast, Connecticut, Rhode Island.
Well, once again, I use these EAFs to, ask some questions, and the neighbors would want to know too, probably. If I lived over there, I'd want a good idea what was what was going on there, what they were gonna do there, if it was gonna affect my life at all. And so
So we will make sure that's updated as well. Again, like I said, when we were talking about this, we were looking at the impact, and one of the things, originally, it could have also included a pure warehousing operation. And talking with the Historic Site Committee, they were a little afraid of that much truck traffic. So I spoke with Mr. Imburgia, and he agreed to limit his tenant search to folks who are doing light manufacturing and distribution. It would not be a large distribution center like a Amazon or a Chewy or somebody like that, where it's just, all they're doing is bringing product in and shipping it right back out, and
right, good.
not doing value add, that type of stuff.
That was a real concern in the
Right.
beginning. So, thank you. I'll wait until I get the new AEF, the updated one. Thanks.
And just to clarify, I believe the EAF currently says 20 to 30, and we aren't expecting terribly much more than that. So I don't know. We're
No,
happy
it's
to correct it, but
It said 20 to 30 trucks a day, and I was just curious why you need 28 docks. That's,
Again, because
Right.
depending on what they're doing, and what a lot of you see with manufacturing today is their warehousing is actually in the trucks. And that way they're ready to go, so that essentially covers them for the different types of uses. Because again, when you don't have the tenant, you typically have to set your maximum parameters.
I'm done. Thanks, Rob, for.
You're welcome. You touched on one of my questions. Jess, because this is near that West Hamlet, it's not in a historic district, but the land is close to it. How would you do the HIPPO study for the SLIPO, for the archaeological?
SHPO?
Yeah, how would you do
the
that?
SHPO study has already been completed, and we received a letter of no impact from SHPO. That's
No
on
impact
file.
law?
Correct.
Okay. Do we get that? I don't know if I've seen it, but,
I don't know if it's in the packet. If it's not, I'll make sure I distribute it.
No problem.
A lot of this stuff is still coming in. So for instance, I think yesterday we just received the town's traffic analysis
Yeah.
of the Fisher report, and
Saw
also
that
came to
too.
the same conclusion that, whereas they identified some areas of concern, most notably the 390
Yes.
intersection with Lehigh Station. The New York State is already working on mitigating traffic there and does not feel that this development would have any impact on their mitigation work there. So they did not feel we should take that into account at all.
Yeah, I
Right.
did
The
see that letter.
specific finding from, actually, it's New York Parks and Recreation. So from SHPO says, based upon this review is the opinion of OPRHP that no properties, including archaeological and/or historic resources listed in or eligible for the New York State and National Registers of Historic Places will be impacted by this project.
All right, thanks, Jess. You guys cut down the sides from 50 to 40, which is great. How will you show us and the residents a view? I don't know if it would be 3D or what, to that effect. How would you show us that it's not going to block the downtown view, it's going to be street level? How would that be done?
That would be, just to be clear, that would be done as part of the site approval process. Until you have a tenant and know what the building is actually going to be, you're not going to generate that. But this goes back to what I said. We will write, conditions to the planning board saying this is what we want to see. So if you've seen the other stuff that they do, and correct me, Jess, where I stray, where Passero's done other stuff, once they have the building, they can generate a 3D view of what it would look like on its site based off of the grading.
Mr. Supervisor, I've already instructed Passero as of today to already do that on a couple of different elevations.
Great. Thank you, Frank.
Thanks a lot. Is there anything else here? What do you use to estimate traffic from something? I mean, you got a guideline book. What do you use to estimate those things on the high side, as you mentioned, Jess?
Yeah, so there's a number of different things that we do. For starters, there's the ITE manual, which is the Institute of Transportation Engineers, which there's actually 3 manuals that are all this thick that get into very specific uses.
Okay.
So we find our use, and they have case studies that they've been doing for years and years and years that have specific equations for based on, square footage that projects the amount of traffic. We also have our own internal data from, again, similar projects that we've done here.
Okay.
We then err on the high side, then the county, the town, and the state all review those calculations to make sure they concur. In addition to that, in terms of the traffic that's already on the street, we take into consideration all known projects in the southwestern area. So, some of the projects that you heard tonight, there's a project at Lehigh and East River Road. So we consider the potential traffic from that. We consider the potential traffic from the Howlett Farm subdivision from Riverton Parcel E. So, and on top of that, we include an additional growth rate factor that says all those projects included, in addition to that, we project that the traffic's going to grow 1% per year to make sure we're being conservative. Data actually shows that in almost every town in Monroe County, traffic volumes have been decreasing over the years, and that was even before COVID.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go down the COVID rabbit hole of
Right.
talking about projected
Right.
volumes, but I will say every place that we could possibly be conservative, we have been.
I did see the 1% in the letter. Thanks for answering that question. I don't have any other questions.
Billy?
Thank you.
Moment.
Lisa?
When you're saying on this light manufacturing, tell me what you're construing light manufacturing. Can you give me an idea of something that it might be? It doesn't have to be exactly what you're doing, but give me an idea of what you consider light manufacturing.
It might be a company that in nature imports raw materials, assembles those, and distributes them right back out.
Right. So you're not, with the light manufacturing, it wouldn't be something that might, I'm trying to think what I want to say.
So just to be clear, one of the restrictions on this zone is that it can't generate excessive noise, odor,
Okay.
fumes, all sorts of stuff. So they couldn't do any heavy manufacturing here legally. It's specifically prohibited. So light manufacturing, like you said, it's typically assembly. We have a bunch of them in town, including by my old house. But it's various stuff. I mean, and another example of light manufacturing, Cantel Medical on West Henrietta Road at
PPP supplies.
Road, right? There's a bunch of,
There you go.
there's a whole bunch of these that they are examples of light manufacturing. It's stuff that, again, they're not using a ton of chemicals. They're not blast furnaces, things like that.
So you said you were going to set up a time frame that they could be coming in and out based, you're going to have some kind of you can come in at 6 a.m., you can't come in maybe any later than 7 p.m. Do you have that set up, what you're thinking of going for?
It's currently listed as 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. on the EAF, which Councilman Stafford referenced.
Oh, I thought it was 5 a.m. to 7 p.m. I may be wrong.
Oh, it was 5 a.m. to 7 p.m. during operations. I'm sorry, I was reading the during construction column, which would be.
Right.
And that's 7 days a week.
And just to be clear, at the
Operation.
5 a.m., if they have trucks backing up, in other words, they could start at 5 a.m., but the trucks,
Right.
when you're near a residential neighborhood from a noise standpoint, they can, unless their backup beeps carry outside the property and disturb the repose of the neighborhood, in which case the limit is 7 a.m.
Right, I believe there's actually a town ordinance that covers.
Correct, right, yeah. So it would be covered, in other words, even after the fact, it would be addressed by our town ordinance, so
And you said 7 days a week.
that, for which, the
what-
ordinance is 7 days a week. Again, they're putting in the parameter because they don't know exactly who the tenant is. In other words, that light manufacturing may only be operating 5 days a week, depending on who the tenant is. But because they don't know who it is yet, they've set the
leaving
larger
a
parameters.
longer-
Yep, you got it.
A wider berth, just to see. what you
But for instance, if there was an issue with, we thought that, with I haven't heard anything from the churches nearby, but if they thought there was an issue with Sunday traffic, we could put that limitation on, the plans. But like I said, those are the kinds of things we can put on. So one of the things that, we're going to look is, to my understanding, Chris Martin, do you know if there's anything else that we're owed other than these couple EAF fixes? You're muted if you're answering.
I think he Fell asleep.
Kevin, go in and wake Chris up.
He went home.
You're bad, Jess. You're bad.
So anyway, to my knowledge, we have everything that we need here. We're gonna obviously take more community input, make sure there's nothing else missing. We'll have a few of these things, like I said, a few of them minor corrections on the EAF, and then the plan would be to, unless there's something else significant, that we would vote on it at the next meeting. So,
You went to see Chris.
So just real quick, I see that there's a proposed right turn lane. Is that a right turn lane only onto West Henrietta Road?
Yeah, it's a T intersection, so we would have 2 lanes. One would be a left turn only, and another would be a right turn only.
Okay.
that was part, again,
That
that
was
was
part of
one
the mitigation that came out of the traffic study.
out of the traffic study in the state, didn't comment on that would be preferred, and they did do it.
Okay.
I can say one of the concerns I had even, and I mentioned it to Supervisor Schultz the other day, was the traffic coming from Lehigh traveling south, let's say in the morning, to the facility, turning left into the project. I travel that once in a while, and it, concerned if that traffic will back up quite a bit while they try to make that turn.
Yeah, like I said, based on all of our very conservative projections, we don't show that to be the case or have a unacceptable level of service for that movement specifically, and all the others.
And I will note that the state did restripe that road some number of years back. It's 2 southbound lanes and a center turn lane. So again, there would be plenty of space for vehicles to queue up, even if it did back up some.
I don't know how somebody could, if they don't know how many people are going to be working there, or the hours that they're working there. So you requested 500 parking spots. So if all 500 people are supposed to report to work at 7 a.m., if it's a 1-shift operation, and they get there they get to that T at at 6:45 or 6:45 and 7 o'clock, I don't see how it couldn't back up, and I don't see how anybody could project a traffic pattern if you don't know how many people are going to be there.
Yeah, a couple of things on that. First of all, of the 500 parking spaces, 150 are proposed to be land banked. The 500 is what's required by code, but we don't feel there's going to be that many needed because we're not going to have that many employees. Of the 350, there's going to be 2 shifts minimum. So half of that would be approximately 175. Our traffic study considers 143 trips in the AM and I believe 151 in the PM, which is a lot more consistent with the anticipated employees per shift. And that's if all those employees were to arrive and leave exactly within the peak hour.
And you see,
So again, Mike, keep in mind, the fact that they don't know exactly, they've put a number that says, here are the bounds.
the max.
Right, the max.
I got
So
Yeah, I
that's how they do the traffic study.
Right. And then
And even at the max, the traffic flow analysis
you mentioned
does
two.
not show an issue.
You mentioned 2 shifts now, and from 5 a.m. to 7 p.m. That is
5 to 12 and 12 to 7.
okay. I deal with a lot of companies in manufacturing and in manufacturing, and I can tell you that nobody works 7-hour shifts. So, and if you include a lunch in there, it's a 6.5-hour shift. I'd like to, I find that strange right off the bat that you're thinking you're going to find a company that is only going to have 6.5
Yeah,
hour
I'll
shifts.
back up and
Or are you planning on changing that time before that's?
we don't
place
plan
is
on
built?
changing the time. That is the boundary that we're comfortable setting. Again, the number of projected trips is based on historical data collected for facilities of the exact same type as these, without getting into a detailed discussion on when shifts occur, how many employees are there. But it is based on facilities that have the same operations that we're anticipating, and have the same operations that we're anticipating.
I know no companies that,
I don't know if the shift's going to be 5 to 12. I maybe went too far in just dividing it in half. The reality of it is, those are conservative projections based on the size of the building and the anticipated operations, and then we err it on the high side.
And again, once they have a tenant and go in to start to build, they still have to get site plan approval.
So will we, if, never mind.
Any other questions from the board before I open it up? Chris, what I had asked, I don't know if you could hear or just couldn't answer. No, I couldn't hear. And if you could come to the podium real quick. I was just curious whether there was, there's a few additions we need from the EAF or changes to the EAF. Do we have everything else we need, do you think, in order to do a seeker determination?
Yeah, so if we have the part one from the applicant where there might be some revisions. We also have a seeker document which spells out a little bit more. It's almost like a draft EAS or EIS in a sense. It's just not as thick. It just covers various information about the project itself. In addition to that, we have a part two and a part three that we fill out that Don and I are reviewing right now. It's a draft. And then there's a part three as well with a supplemental that addresses some of the comments that are raised in part two. So if it's like if it's a low or moderate, you don't need to respond. But if it's a severe one, then yeah, a response is provided. So again, Don and I review that. If the board would like to see a draft of that, I'd be more than happy to let them look at it.
We will before next meeting, but our thought is that I just want to make sure that we identify if there's anything that's missing, because like I said, the schedule, potential schedule, depending on whether anything other significant comes up tonight, is that we would draft that. We'd put together a resolution that has all the limitations that we would place both on the special use permit as well as what we would like the planning board to consider when doing the site plan, and do that at the next meeting.
Sure.
So I just wanted to make sure if there's anything missing, I wanted us to identify it now so that they have time to get that to us to be able to draft those.
Okay. I'd like to have Don take a look at it first before I give it to the board members,
Oh,
just to make
absolutely.
sure everything's.
Yeah, we've got time before the next meeting, but I just wanted to let you know. Don, did you want to add something?
You're talking the first meeting in March
March 20.
Yes,
or March 24th?
first meeting in March, right?
Okay.
That's the next meeting.
Yeah, March 10th.
Yep.
Did you say you're going to provide a view shed analysis?
Well, we provided the line of sight studies, which shows the relationship of the building elevation to the road elevations and neighboring properties.
Yeah, the
Okay.
board should have received those in their packets. There should be one from Lehigh Station Road and another one, I'm sorry, Erie Station Road, and one from.
What I was saying, Don, is that I would put on a requirement that they have to provide one to the planning board to do the site plan approval as part of the site plan approval process.
Yeah,
To
once
make
we-
sure it doesn't, we're going to identify essentially set the parameters to make sure it meets the parameters that we talk about.
Okay.
If you'd prefer, Frank had already committed to one, so if you'd prefer we have it before the next meeting, do you think that would be possible with just the square building as it is?
Sure.
Okay.
Just,
Yeah, I
Thanks,
mean, we had some comments that we wanted to have addressed.
Okay.
In detail,
Okay.
and I feel like next meeting is very aggressive in order to handle that.
Yeah, and I'd like to respond to it. If there are changes to part one, then we'll have to send that out to the various coordinated review agencies.
We could. The changes are just that they are going to mark the excavation. Someone had
All right.
suggested that be marked. And then again, we're going to just change it to be the light manufacturing with distribution.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well, so
there's stuff I want, to be honest, there's something I'd like to say, attorney-client privilege, that
Okay.
I'm not going to say on the record right now.
Okay, so we'll have a discussion later. It might be at the second meeting, depending on the turnaround time. Anyway, anything else? Kevin, did you have something you wanted to add?
All right, hold on.
Turn the microphone up. Yeah, there you go.
back on.
It's on, yep.
Kevin Wilson, Director of Building and Fire Prevention. This is actually the first time that I've seen the revised site plan, and I have an issue with one entrance. Fire code does require 2 fire apparatus access roads to a building this size, anything over 124,000 square foot.
Could it go out to the right of that, further down the lane?
Are you talking to the north or?
So in other words, there are 2 entrances to that entire loop road, right?
Right, but the apparatus road is from the firehouse to the building. So you have a bottleneck where yes, you do have the loop road going around, but it comes to the same point.
What I'm getting at is, can we have well, I mean, there's still the loop road has an Erie Station entrance and a West Henrietta entrance.
Correct.
So there's absolutely 2 entrances. You're saying just from that loop road, there's just a single driveway in?
Correct.
Could they bring a second one out? Essentially, if you look at that truck entrance, could they go more or less straight out to that same point on the loop road?
Well, the issue is they got the retaining wall there.
I understand. I'm just, yeah.
Could
So
easily fit a secondary entrance to the main loop road. That's not a problem.
I prefer the original location. I understand it, it wouldn't have to be it could be a limited access road. In
so
other
a
words,
crash gate type?
yeah, yes. In other words,
So there was originally a second exit out to the southeast. So if you basically come off that big loop of the trucking.
Can you see the arrow on the screen?
I can't, oh, now I can, yep.
Right in there?
Yeah, so it used to go out there and over to the Erie Station Road entrance, but we weren't a fan of that because, again, we're trying to discourage any trucks going out that way.
We could put a small fire access only with a crash gate out in that direction. I mean, this is typically a site plan review type comment, but
I just want to make sure because the plans are presented without it, so I just want to make sure.
No, that makes sense, yep.
Okay. That's all I had. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll now open it up, unless any other members of the board have any comments, we'll open it up to the public. Well, Craig's changing the microphone. Is there anyone online who wishes to speak? If you're on Zoom, you can use the raise hand control. If you're using the app or on your computer, or if you've dialed in, you can hit *9. And when it's your turn to speak, the meeting host will enable you to talk. For anyone who is deaf or hard of hearing, you can use the Q&A feature. For those who are not deaf or hard of hearing, please reserve it for the deaf and hard of hearing. Is there anyone online?
I do have some folks here with their hands raised. Are you ready for the first person then?
We are.
Okay, we're going to start with Rich Rowe.
Good evening, this is Rich Rowe. Can you hear me all right?
We can.
yes.
Okay, I live at 1026 Middle Road. A couple questions when we were talking about the light manufacturing. Is it possible to have like plastic injection molding equipment? Is that considered light manufacturing?
As long as it's not generating fumes, noise, stuff like that. Again, anything that generates fumes, noise, there was like 5 or 6 things listed in the restriction.
Okay,
That is specifically prohibited from this. Those are the specifics in this industrial with specifics.
okay. And then, obviously the big concern with traffic, the traffic study that was done, what percentage of the residents of this new building do you expect to be traveling down Erie Station Road? Because I can see a lot of them avoiding the traffic on West Henrietta Road with the stoplights there at 253 and Brooks Road and just the congestion at Lehigh Station. I could see them driving through the loop and getting on Erie Station Road and going down Middle Road or going to East Henrietta Road. In that traffic study, was there a percentage of those vehicles considered going that direction?
Would you like me to answer that?
Yep.
Yeah, I believe it was approximately 10% was the assumption.
Okay, that seems kind of light, but okay. Steve, what's the occupancy expected for the Rochester Regional Building?
You know that answer?
Did you hear the question?
The occupancy for the Rochester Regional Building, the existing Delphi building?
I mean, what they'll be doing in there, the type of occupancy?
Yeah, what's the expected occupancy? Their traffic study data is included in the numbers. It's the comp
Okay,
too, but.
right, I was just curious if that was included in there, because, you know, the Delphi building, you know, we had a capacity of about 750 residents at one time, so.
Yeah, we, during the traffic study, basically used an assumption that the Delphi building was completely full and operational based on the size of the parking lot. Whether or not it ever gets to that, who knows? But again, that was another one of those worst case scenarios. We didn't ignore the Delphi building when we did our traffic study. We assumed that that thing was full with, 700 employees.
Okay, so you got the 700 plus the 150 there at this new location, so about 900 vehicles in and out every day.
That was the conservative assumption that we made for the traffic study.
Okay, and then the types of trucks going in and out, I can't imagine all of them being 18 wheelers. I imagine some being UPS, Amazon type vans. I could see some of them shortcutting and driving through the loop and going up on Erie Station Road.
Why? Out of curiosity, where's their ultimate destination?
Right. I mean, I'm just asking, in that traffic study, was there a comprehension of a percentage of those delivery vehicles coming or going, getting on Erie Station Road? Or is the assumption that 100% are going to be using West Henrietta Road?
Well, the assumption is that the majority of the trucks, the large trucks, would use West Henrietta Road. It's not a cross dock type facility where you have big trucks coming in and then small vans flying in the other. It's, it's not an Amazon facility. So we're not anticipating a significant amount of those types of vehicles. And those vans, quite frankly, in traffic studies are not differentiated because they're the same size as a large pickup truck.
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand the traffic on Erie Station. In non-COVID times, that intersection of Erie Station Middle Road with school buses and traffic does back up. And now we're going to add additional traffic. So I'm just trying to understand what's been studied and how it's been studied.
Rich, which again, based on concerns of residents, was why we asked the developer to remove just a full warehousing operation, warehouse distribution like an Amazon from consideration for this site, was to avoid specifically that. So again, when you're looking at the type, what typically happens with light manufacturing, they're going to load up 18 wheelers and they're going to send them to the thruway. And there's a truck entrance to the thruway just north of here.
Right.
So I don't see any reason why those trucks would go down Erie Station Road, especially since they'd have to make a left onto Erie Station Road, a left onto Middle Road, a left onto Lehigh Station Road, and a left onto the expressway, when instead they could make a right onto West Henrietta Road and make a right into the truck entrance for the exit and never even have to hit the 390 intersect the Lehigh Station Road.
I understand, Steve. I appreciate you walking through that. I was just wondering about the types of smaller trucks instead of the large 18 wheelers, if we had like the UPS style.
Well, and again, like I said, we did as a town board have concern if this were going to be an Amazon type distribution center. And so, like I said, we did ask the developer to essentially remove that from consideration. So again, we're changing the EAF to be light manufacturing and distribution. So
Okay.
The special permit would not allow for a Amazon distribution center to go in here.
Right. Okay. All right. Thank you. That's all I had.
Somebody in the room? Is that you, Mike? It's hard to tell sometimes with math. There we go.
I am Michael Heading. We live at 5628 West Henrietta Road.
A few things, not sure if they were addressed, but at the last meeting, it was brought up that when we first bought our house, the former owners had told us when they put in Delphi that there were some special, I wouldn't call them rules or whatever regulations.
Those are the specifics that
Okay.
we've been talking about.
Right, so like, did somebody go back and look at the original application when that happened and that all
We
those
did.
things are being followed?
They are.
Okay,
Those are the things talking about that the no, those restrictions on what can be there. It's very limited as to what, it's a subset of industrial use that is allowed there.
so,
There are so basically nothing that's prohibited in a number of different sections, as well as there were 3 additional items that were prohibited, 3 specific things that were prohibited. Funny one, like including nothing in terms of vehicle, nothing with regards to vehicle, except for the research that they were doing with so like they couldn't have a car crushing,
Right.
anything like that. But
well, that was like for the entire parcel, but
that's
at
for the whole zone.
at that one point, it wasn't subdivided yet. So was there ever,
That's
when-
for the district. It's irrespective of
Right.
parcels.
so when it
That's
was
for the
subdivided, that also got grandfathered along with all the, 'cause I don't remember when the subdivision actually took place.
Zoning has nothing to do with the parcels themselves. It has to do with the zone. If the parcel lies within the zone, it has to follow the rules of that zone.
Okay, but there was no buffer requirement from the Delphi building to the residential houses.
There was not. There was, again, it was contemplated that it would have greater than normal green space, which, as they've noted, this does.
Right.
There, although interestingly enough, that was not actually codified in the specifics, but there was discussion of that.
Maybe it was
So-
just assumed by the residents and that wasn't actually a rule that was part
Right.
of the,
It's one of those things that we make sure
urban
anytime we
legend.
have those discussions, we put them as stipulations on the stuff because, again, otherwise they can get lost. But to their credit, they are building this, again, 63% green space.
Okay. And then there was discussion last meeting of how would we guarantee that the tractor trailers and the increased traffic wouldn't be utilizing the Erie Station, West Henrietta Road intersection? What was going to prevent anybody who, say, had to go 390 south? Why would they go to the north and get on at Lehigh Station when they could turn left and avoid that whole traffic scene and just get on at the rush exit? Or coming up from the south, getting off at 390
So
at Rush and
actually-
driving through the intersection to turn right into the building instead of,
To get on the expressway, they don't have to go up to Lehigh Station Road. South of, just north of the thruway, there's a New York State entrance, truck entrance.
but that's just for the thruway, right? That's not for 390.
That's a good question. I don't know that.
Because I'm concerned just with because I know when I set the GPS, it picks the fastest route.
Right.
Truck drivers use GPS a lot. So if they're coming up from the southern tier on 390 and their GPS says get off at the Rush exit, travel north on 15, make a
Right.
right into the establishment.
So
all
I
those trucks are gonna
guess
be
my
going-
answer is there is no guarantee.
Right.
But just for that matter, the entire rest of the town, if they're going south to the Rush exit, are gonna go by through that intersection as
Right.
well.
I'm just concerned more with trucks because my
Well, I'm
house.
talking about the whole, all the trucks from all the folks along, there's a bunch of other industrial
Right, but
sites
we're talking
south
about-
of the thruway.
Right,
All
we're-
the stuff on Thruway Park. There's a ton of industrial sites on Thruway
Right.
Park.
Well, no, I know because they all go past the house every day. But like the front of my house is literally 30 feet from West Henrietta Road.
Understood.
So if a truck is going the speed limit, which most of them don't, my windows rattle as it is. So to increase that, it would just add to it.
Understood. Although, again, I appreciate that, and we're doing everything we can. So like one of the things we did, there was a request from RGH to change their street address to be an Erie Station Road street address. We turned them down.
Right.
For exactly as you said, the GPS, the people coming southbound on West Henrietta Road would go through the intersection. We want them coming in at that northern entrance. We're doing everything we can to steer all the cars out that northern entrance. Can I guarantee that none of them are going to go to the rush? No, I
Right.
can't. But again, all the folks coming out of Thruway Park, if they're heading south on 390, they can do the same thing.
Right.
That didn't stop any of those from getting built. All the stuff along the way, there's I forgot the name of the hydroelectrics or hydroacoustics. There's a bunch of stuff on West Henrietta Road, exact same thing.
Right.
So I get it that you don't want people driving by your house.
Well, just
But
in
you
concern
can't
about
put
the
a-
intersection and the traffic.
And I get it, but that doesn't mean that there can be a moratorium on all trucks in
No.
Henrietta.
No.
So,
And I know I had brought up at the last meeting, something similar to like where 531, they have their own separate entrance and exit off of that for the Kodak area there. Was that ever a consideration to try and do something like that with 390 since the proximity of it? And that would help not only the RGH project, but also the distribution.
I don't know that the state DOT will allow that.
Right.
Because the difference at that 531 with the Kodak facility, at the time that was being built, there's not another nearby exit.
Right.
Whereas you can actually see the edge of the on-ramp from the throughway
Right.
right near here.
Yeah,
They
it's al-
typically don't like,
It's already congested there.
right, they typically don't like them
Having multiple
like that.
exits.
Put it this way, I asked them if there was some way to have the off-ramp from 390 at Lehigh Station Road go straight into that park that now includes Paychecks, and that's gone nowhere. So
Okay.
it's certainly something that we can ask.
Okay.
I would not pin any hopes on it.
No. I just wondered if it had been brought up. And then this is the first time I've seen the new design and the berms and the retention ponds and stormwater management. When we first moved into the property, obviously we were dealing with all of the water runoff from the hill and other neighbors and whatever. And I had asked the town if they would help me with some sort of drainage mitigation. They said, no, it's up to me as the property owner to handle whatever water's coming on my property. So at a considerable expense of our own, my wife and I paid somebody to dig us a pond and put in our own drain pipe and to divert the water, collect it and divert it. And if this happens, while I appreciate they're going to be handling the water problem, they're going to be causing us a problem because our pond will dry up and now we'll have to fill it in at our cost.
So
And
you don't want them to take the water away
well,
from
it's
your
a
property?
catch-22. We originally, never thought anything was going to get built there, and we were told by the town it was our problem to solve, so we solved it. And now there's a positive and a negative to this.
So let me just say this, Jess, when you're looking at the design for the water runoff, if you could consider,
We'll fill it in.
well,
I don't think he
if
wants
you want him to fill it in, then he'll fill it in, or,
I mean, I'd have to ask my wife. We just
yeah,
saw
figure out
this.
what you want to do, but the point is we'll take that into account. We'll see what we can do to,
Yeah.
in that regards. But again, based on other projects he's done in town, I don't think you're going to have an issue with if there's something that needs to get done. Frank will
Right.
make sure
Well,
it gets done.
that's why I just wanted to bring it up because it's not a big
Appreciate you
pond.
bringing it up.
It
Nope.
may be, and you may be able to see it on Google Earth, but like I said, it was a problem for us for years, so that's why we paid somebody to dig a pond
Sounds
and
good.
put in the drain pipe and all that.
Okay,
Okay.
Thank you.
thank you. Someone online?
Yes, next up we have Sue.
Sue, if you're speaking, you're muted.
Okay, I think I got it now. Sorry.
Hear you.
My question is regarding the truck traffic coming in and off of West Henrietta Road, more going out onto West Henrietta Road, turning north. I know that you talked about adding a right-hand turn lane there, and I'm assuming that a good portion of these trucks, when you have 28 bays, and you're saying that some of those trucks are maybe stationed there and used for warehousing, that they must be semis. And I'm just concerned, a semi can't make a sharp right-hand turn. I had the opportunity today, while I was sitting at Lehigh and West Henrietta Roads at the light, to observe a semi making a right-hand turn from the turning lane on Lehigh Station Road onto 15A going north. And that semi took over both of the northbound lanes on Route 15 and a portion of the southbound turning lane. So 2.5 lanes of traffic, was what the semi used to make a right-hand turn. If that's the case, and the semi comes off of this road here on the turning lane, they're taking over a good portion of West Henrietta Road.
Right.
As you know, West Henrietta Road, there most recently was remarked, so that at that point here, there's only one northbound lane, the center turning lane, and even that's not enough room for a semi to make a right-hand turn.
So if you look at the drawing, the right-hand turn has a very large turn radius designed to accommodate an 18-wheel truck, so they won't have to pull out. The reason they have to do that maneuver is if it's a traditional driveway with a hard right turn, they have to pull straight out so that when the rig swings around, the wheels don't go over the curb and either destroy the curb, whatever's there, and or potentially cause the truck to roll. If you put a large turning radius in, and again, the transportation engineers have those all defined, then they do not have to do that maneuver, and they will not go out past the single lane that they're turning into. So again, if you look at the design, it has a very, very rounded right-hand turn for just that reason.
So you're saying, though, that after all the work that they've been doing on the Lehigh Station in West Henrietta, that in that gigantic intersection, that wasn't already taken into account for that right-hand turn? It just seems like I see this truck and I don't understand how they're going to be able to do that easily without causing a problem there. And the number of what I assume will be large trucks or semis, for that section of road, it's going to really add to the traffic there. And I use that road on a regular basis, and I tell you, I'm not going to be happy if I have to sit behind semis.
So to answer your question about the intersection with West Henrietta Road and Lehigh Station Road, because that's some of the older intersections, the buildings tend to be closer to the street. And so they would have to wipe out a good portion of Tim Hortons, for instance, to put that large turn radius at the intersection there.
Well, I was talking about the turn radius heading northbound, which is basically a big empty car, a big car lot. There was plenty of room there when they did that.
I don't know what you're talking about then.
But so you're saying, though, that how many of these are going to be large trucks like that? I mean, 28 dock bays for a light manufacturing place seems like an awful lot of big trucks in and out of there.
So again, that is the maximum as we're looking at this. That doesn't mean that that's what the ultimate client is going to have. Again, from a seeker standpoint, they're talking 20 trucks a day.
Well, even 20 trucks a day along that section of West Henrietta Road is a lot of trucks when you're driving and you're there, and it just seems like it's too many big semis in an area there that shouldn't have it. Thank you very much for answering the question.
If not West Henrietta Road, then where in town?
Not that section of West Henrietta Road, but you've answered my question. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Someone in the building?
good here?
Yep, you're good to go.
Hello,
Howard, could you
everyone. Good
move
evening.
in front, move the mic in front of your mouth? Thank you.
Yeah, good evening. My name's Howard Konar. I'm here to represent Erie Station Business Park and Erie Station Village. Our interest in this project is similar to that of other neighbors. We're concerned about the impact on our property values and enjoyment of our property. Members of the town board, as well as the developer, know that we're the people who hired a traffic engineer to review the traffic study that was done, and also hired a lawyer to review compliance with seeker. I spoke earlier today with the developer, Frank, from Imbergia Brothers Holding, about our concerns, and I think he asked me a fair question. He asked what I'd like to see happen with a new project on this property. I told Frank I'd be happy enough with a new project if after it's done, we don't have truck traffic rumbling past Erie Station Village, and if residents of Erie Station Village don't look out their windows and see a really large building dominating the view. So how do we get there? Regarding traffic, I know that our traffic engineer differed on some points with the traffic study that was done by Passero. I also know that the town has hired its own engineer to review both, and that apparently as of today or yesterday, a lot of reports have come back saying that the traffic impact has been abated. I think there's been some new questions asked tonight, and my hope would be that out of the review process, we get the best possible design for traffic on the site, and that results in little or no increased truck traffic below the entry to the site on West Henrietta Road. I understand there will be an increase above, and minimal impact on the intersection of Lehigh Station Road and 390. And again, Jess Sudol said earlier that that report had already come back from Monroe County. So second, regarding the view, I think the best tool available to the town and the neighbors for evaluating the visual impact is a 3D model that would use actual video from the street and then superimpose an image of the building so that it can be viewed from all different angles. In our conversation today, Frank said his engineers would provide that model in the near future, which we appreciate. So other than that, my expectation going forward is that the town does what it's required to do in a seeker review, which is to take a hard look at the possible negative impacts caused by this project. And that gets me to my last point. In a lot of the meetings so far regarding this project, and including tonight, there's been a lot of talk about trust and reputation and everything else. And I agree, trust is important, but it only gets you so far. And that's for the simple reason that whatever's finally built on this site is probably going to survive all of us in the room here today. So that is, in fact, the purpose of a good and thorough seeker review, to ensure that years from now, when the building is on its second owner and its third tenant, it still functions in ways that avoid negative impacts on the surrounding neighborhood. My request to the town board is therefore to collect the materials you need, and that's all of you, not just the supervisor who has clearly taken the lead here, to listen, to take a hard look at the project under seeker, listen to the input of the residents, and then do the best job possible to mitigate the traffic, view, and other impacts in ways that stand the test of time. Thank you.
So Howard, one of the things I will state is this board, as well as the previous board, basically since I've taken office, we have been very much in terms of, we add the stipulations when we have these things and the discussion happens at the workshop. One of the things that used to happen in this town all the time is they'd have all this discussions, promises would be made, the special use permit would pass with no stipulations on it. 3 years later, somebody would come and change something. And I can give you plenty of concrete examples, but I won't take up the more time doing that. We don't want that to happen. This board, especially Rob, Mike, and myself, and again, used to be Scott and Rick, and now it's Lisa and Millie, we don't want to see that happen. And so when we do the special use permit, we put the stipulations on there. We write those on there so that if they ever violate them down the road, they can have their certificate of occupancy yanked. So in terms of, yeah, we trust, okay, but we'll use the old line, trust but verify, right? So again, that's why you know, with complicated projects like this, we absolutely take a long time to look at it. I mean, this has been going on for quite some time. We've required them to do a bunch of additional studies, a bunch of modifications. We've changed our town code to add additional buffering around historic sites. We've dug into this in great detail. So towards your point, and it's not just me, the town board has asked a ton of questions, dug into this a lot, read the EAF. I do feel we are doing exactly what you're asking. The thing I will say, like I said, is the reason we are doing the resolution at another point is because we're going to, at another meeting, we're going to take all of this stuff and form those stipulations that will be both on there will be a number of them that will be on the special use permit itself, and there will be a number of recommendations that we will create and hand to the planning board so that they include those in their site plan review, because it's a two-step process, as you know. And so we've done that with a number of projects. And, you know, again, the idea is, when we talk about you know, like I said, some of the things like the fill in the pond and that type of stuff, you're talking about trust in that it's somebody who is good to their neighbors. And again, it's based off of experience because he's done a lot of projects in town. And like yourself and like a number of other builders, when we ask you to do something to help out a neighbor, you guys respond, and that's great. But to your point, if it's a restriction, so the point is that restriction to fill in the pond, once that's done, it's gone, right? So we're not going to put a stipulation on the special use permit in that regards. But in terms of the use and the impact and that type of stuff, that will be right on the special use permit. And that will be right on, there will be additional ones on the site plan approval itself. And so again, those are enforceable down the road, because I don't want to see what happened. And the example I always use is Rivers Run. I don't want to see what happened to the residents in Rivers Run who there was an approval for one thing. They bought their house based on that thing being there. 3 years later, the developer changed it, and now they are underwater because their mortgages are greater than their house values dropped so much because of that change. Their mortgages are greater than the worth of their house. We don't ever want to see that kind of thing happen. So we put the stipulation to prevent that. If the developer then ever tries to do that, the town board can come in and or the director of building and fire prevention can pull their certificate of occupancy and shut them down. So to your point, this board has been very aware of that and making sure that those kinds of things get passed down with the property.
I understand all that. One of the things I've noticed tonight is that a lot of questions that could be answered by the developer and the engineer have been answered by you. And I wish that we could hear their responses, because they're the people who are building the building and designing it.
We can answer their responses. The reason I've answered on some of them is because, again, a lot of the changes, as we're talking about it, were dictated by this town board for exactly the reasons you just said. And so a lot of people say, oh, well, it's a hollow promise if it's coming from a developer. In fact, I believe even you had some accusations in that regards. And so the point is, if it's coming from me, I'm telling you that it's got the force of the town behind it. So that's why I'm answering. If you'd rather have the developer answer, you can ask him the question directly and they'll answer it.
I think a lot of the questions that have come in about traffic could be answered by the people who prepared the traffic report.
Well, except that some of those answers were not from their traffic report. They were from our town consultant's traffic report. So that's what I was actually reporting, what our town consultant said about the Fisher report that you provided. It wasn't their place to answer and rebut that. It was a place for our expert to do so, as well as the county and the state. Do you agree?
Turning radiuses of trucks? I mean, honestly, there have been times during the presentation tonight when you have said that we have revised the application.
We did ask them to revise the application.
It's the developer and the engineer who are revising the application, not the town.
No.
And that makes me uncomfortable.
Howard, you can't have it both ways. You're just saying you want the town to hold them responsible and to make changes and be responsive to the comments from the town. And when we make them do those changes, you're saying you want them to make the statements?
I want the town to be neutral.
We are being neutral. The things that we're asking them to do, you could argue I mean, it depends what you mean by neutral, because again, you're asking us to do things that represent you in terms of what kind of changes you want to see, right? Mike Heading just said he'd like to see a pond. We're advocating essentially for the historic area and the existing people in the town. At the same time, we're balancing that with the needs of the property owners, because property owners have rights of development. All rights are comparative rights. All rights have to be balanced.
There was an incident tonight where one of your own staff members said, I'm just looking at this for the first time. And it's clear to me that you want this to go quickly, and your own counsel is saying we need to slow down. So
how can you say quickly? When did this start?
This is the first time that there have ever been plans submitted since November. It's the first time the public's ever been able to look at it.
Understood. Now, are we making a decision tonight?
No.
Right.
But do you need to make a decision the first week in March?
That was our original schedule. And when our town attorney said there were additional things that needed to be done, then I said, well, if they can't be done by then, we'll do it on the second meeting.
I think a hard look requires time. There's been a lot of new information here tonight, and I'm quite sure that by the time this is done, this project is going to be approved. But I don't believe that so far the time has been taken to really look at the things that have come out.
Well, I think you're wrong, and I'm actually insulted by you right now, to be perfectly blunt.
I don't mean to be insulting. I'm saying this with all due respect, but
if I may, I do think there was some confusion because the developers did come in and present, when was that, in December or?
I think so.
Previously, and they stated quite clearly that they were not prepared yet to present, but at the request of the town, they did come in and present to collect information from the members. So it's almost like tonight is the start of the clock rather than that original presentation.
Except for from a seeker standpoint, there have been numerous traffic studies, reviewed traffic studies. Again, the allegation that we're not taking a deep look, I think we've looked deeper at this than almost, and maybe the only one that we've looked deeper would be Ward Hill. And we're not even done yet. So that assertion that the town isn't looking at this, again, I take offense to that.
I ended my comments by saying that my request to the town board is that you collect the materials you need to take a hard look at the project, listen to the input of residents, and then do the best possible job to mitigate traffic, view, and other impacts in ways that stand the test of time.
And
I stand by that
application
statement.
that's come in front of this board.
Can I interject?
Thank you.
Howard, thanks for your letter. Appreciate it. This board will take a hard look at it. Your letter helps us do that. When both you developers were here, and I've never met Frank before, I wondered, would these guys talk to each other? So I'm very happy to hear that a phone call was made between the two of you to kind of smooth this over. So this board does care about what your concerns are for that district. And we are going to take a hard look at it. And we'll take everybody for the word and make sure they do what they got to do.
Well, and I can't see Frank and Jess behind the board there, but Frank and I did have a pretty open and honest conversation today, and I was happy with it.
Good.
And he ended up basically offering to do something that he didn't have to do that will really help people visualize the impact of the building.
Yeah, that was one of my questions.
Which I appreciate.
Yeah,
So-
that's great.
Okay,
So
thank
be
you.
patient. Be patient with us.
I'm a patient person.
Okay.
Thank you, Howard.
Thank you.
Next person online.
Now I had, Walter had his hand raised for quite a while. He's since lowered it. I'm just gonna check in with him to make sure that he's all set. Oh, he raised his hand again. He's ready to talk.
Yes, Walter Liss. I had just a question, getting off traffic and other issues. I'm just thinking in the interest of the building being visually appealing as well from an environmentally conscious aspect. Are there any thoughts from the developer about incorporating like a green roof system for this project? Has that ever been explored in any of the previous FSI projects?
Was it green what?
Green building.
A green roof, a green roof.
Oh, green roof. Oh,
Just looking at it from, it's quite an expansive roof layout. And I know that those aren't prevalent in this area, but I'm just tossing it out there.
There has been, and I don't mean to discount it flippantly, but I will remind the board and the audience that with 63% green space on site, that's a pretty significant number. We've chose to provide that actual natural green space,
sure,
as opposed to a green roof, which is typical in urban settings where you have 90% and above impervious coverage otherwise, but not in rural settings where you have a significant amount of green space already.
Oh, okay. All right. I just, and some of the people that are looking at that project from the road, you kind of just see the expansive roof and it's pretty boring. And that's just a thought that I had. Also, in a project of this size, is there any thought given to like recreational avenues for some of the employees that may be working there, like a walking path or something like that?
Yeah, during the site plan review process, we frequently provide that level of detail with walking paths. We have, again, a lot of green space that will allow us the opportunity to provide that when we get there. So yeah, I think that's a good comment.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had.
thanks, Walter.
Thanks, Walter.
Is there someone else in the room? So next person online?
That's all I have online.
Frank, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, can I take a moment to address everybody? So I want to take some time and just kind of review a couple things here because I think it's important. The town of Henrietta is very important to me. Everything that I've ever done here in this administration or the previous administration and the previous administration before that, because I did have the fortune of working for some of the big developers over the years since, the last 25 or 30 years in developing Jefferson Road and all these parcels. And then I've matriculated into being one of those guys now. And I take great pride in the properties that I have and cultivating them and, making them A+ projects. I want to be best in class, and that's what I do. I think this particular piece of property presents itself in a way that's a little different than usual. I typically won't go down a path where I think a project's going to be, have some resistance or, where people are going to be somewhat recalcitrant in a way. I do believe in being a good neighbor. Being a good neighbor is very, very important. It's kind of like being a gentleman and doing what you say you're going to do. And, certainly the town knows that we do that. But, Howard, in speaking with him, I've spoken with him, a multitude of times, and I have a great deal of respect for Howard because his name is synonymous in our community. His philanthropy is second to none, and we know that. But there's a couple questions that you guys are really looking for me that I can't give to you, but I'm going to give you in totality. Right now, what I'm best in class at is nationally. I have a multitude of tenants that I work with. I have MSAs with some of the biggest companies in the world that not a lot of people in Rochester, New York know about that because I keep my head down because anonymity is very important to me. I was very successful in creating a deal here and saving that building for RGH, which I think will be a great use and a great pillar to the Henrietta community, and especially 390 and the New York State Thruway. And I saw the significance of that. And I had a big tenant lined up to come in there and, kind of wipe out this whole thing that had research, that had everything that fit, was right in class to do that. But in doing that, it would have been a 2 or 3 year project. It would have been an undertaking, and sometimes less is more. And I told that to Howard today. And I'm going to tell you right now, I think that especially you, sir, you're looking for the tenant and you're looking for what it is. Right now, when you have product nationally, PPP and COVID, what it's done to the industrial supply chain, there's a 1% vacancy nationally. And I deal with those institutional people every day of the week. And I provide product for them. And the way I provide product for them is when I have it. And when it's ready to go, they show up immediately. And that's what will happen here. And significantly thereafter, when we have these approvals in place and I'm ready to, put the shovel in the ground, and we're well capitalized right now. We have to deploy some money because that's what happened in our business because it comes in waves. I think before I come in for a building permit, you'll know who that tenant is. And I'll be able to be more direct and I'll be more, single. And there could be 2 tenants in this building, quite frankly, if we do it right. I think you'll be ultimately pleased. I think I can provide Howard and the residents that are close to, are adjacent to us, and they're the most important ones. I know Howard has significant properties, as I do in nature, in the relative vicinity, and I am concerned, I will address his, but I'm more concerned about the people directly around my property and what affects them and how they do. Now, nobody likes change, but certainly I could come in with a 300,000 square foot user that does research and won't have a negative impact, and we'll still get through seeker, I believe, at the end of the day. I'm willing to do what it takes to make the people around me happy. I'm not going to risk my reputation. I'm 51 years old. I'm going to go strong until I'm 75, 80 years old. It's in my nature. And I got a great operation. I got great people, and I'm not going to risk my reputation over one project. And, if I have to forego, that 350,000 square foot user to do 200,000 square foot here, that's right. And I'm in the dirt, right? That's what we're going to do. And I'm going to address Howard's needs. I'm going to address everyone else's things. And when we get done over there, it's going to be right. And I know you'll make sure that it's right. And you'll have my commitment that I make sure it's right. And I rely on my people that are around me, and I rely on you to guys put me in the right direction. And so far, we've been very good at doing that. And then we like cultivating things that are, at one time maybe A pluses and they turn into C's, but we're going to turn them back into an A. And that's what the world's about. It's about what you leave behind, not what you take with you. So I have had the good fortune of working with Howard. We're going to continue to work with him. And I don't expect a fight here in any way, shape, or form. I just expect to get through this properly. And I thank you for your time. And I apologize that sometimes it's a little difficult. And, Howard did bring up one thing today. He goes, when I developed this property down there, it was kind of a little bit of a hornet's nest. And when I looked at this property in totality, it said industrial with specifics. So in my mind, maybe I did overlook the neighbors a little bit, but in times of COVID and in times of Zoom calls and not being able to get to people and setting up neighborhood meetings as maybe we typically would do, and I didn't think I was changing any zoning or doing anything like that or asking for something that's really over the top. I'm really going to put an industrial building, whether it has research or light manufacturing and distribution. It's going to look the same. It's going to act the same. It's going to behave the same. And I think that that's really the premise of what we're doing. But I think you can count on me to make sure that it's going to be right at the end of the day. And if you have to push it out a couple, 2 or 3 weeks or a month, if that's what makes you happy, if that's what makes everyone else happy, then so be it. Okay? You're not going to kill me in that capacity right now. So that's my speech. And, that's where I come from. And I appreciate your time and your commitment to the community. And you know that you have my commitment. You have my dollars. And I park a lot of dollars in the town of Henrietta. I want to create a lot of jobs and a lot of opportunity and tax basis. And that's one other thing I don't typically ask for is, pilot programs and things that are going to take away from the school district. Although the dome was a little different when we did that.
Right.
But, there's some things that I've done that, I hope you do realize that, when you drive by and you see our properties and how we act and behave, that will continue. That's not going to go away anytime soon. So thank you very much. And thank you, Howard, and thank you for the rest of the people that voiced in tonight.
Thanks for saying so, Frank. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Don, from a procedural standpoint, do you think we need additional public hearing to keep this open? Should we close it, reopen as necessary? If we're going to be 2 weeks, I'd rather not keep it open because then we wouldn't be here next week.
Tough to decide that on the spot. I think we'll just logistically.
Don, can you turn your microphone on?
Logistically, I know on the 24th we have a very heavy schedule.
Right.
So I don't want to clog it up even more. I'm not sure what to do logistically in terms of that issue, the scheduling. My opinion is if we are going to get some more information in terms of, I think they offered some kind of visual impact.
They're going to do a
review.
3D rendering, yeah.
It'd be nice to be able to see that and have a look at it before we finish up the seeker package. That's kind of what I was getting at before.
Right.
And so I'm not sure if that's possible by the first meeting in March, then so be it. If it's not, it might be nice to have the extra 2 weeks, to get that second meeting in March.
Right. Okay. Didn't exactly answer my question.
Do we leave it open or don't we?
You gave him a lot to think about.
Those are great lawyers.
I think I'm going to close this public hearing and then we will reopen when we have the material ready.
That sounds
Does that
good.
work?
Yes.
Okay, any objections?
No.
So I'm closing the public hearing for Imburgia Brothers Holding FSI Construction, special use permit application number 2020-28. And again, once we have the additional material, we will reopen and hold an additional public hearing. Thank you for all who provided input. Thanks for all who attended and listened, and very much appreciate it. Thank you. With that, can I get my first resolution?
Does Terry need a break?
Let me.
Oh, that's a good point.
5 minute, Terry, you need a 5 minute?
My stuff is. You just.
You were supposed to have a second person for us.
All right.
Long story. Okay.
Does she need to do the resolutions?
She usually does.
It should go fairly quickly, I think. Yeah, go.
Go ahead.
Okay.
So we're going to take a couple minute break and we'll be back in session shortly.
Okay, then.
Should go through fairly quickly, I think.
Thank you. We're still live, right?
We're still live.
We are still live, yes.
You did better than I thought. I didn't think we'd be on resolutions by 9 o'clock. Is your mic still on?
Hey, Steve, it's Kevin. I just want to go on record that I have reviewed this plan, and this is the first time that I noted or saw that the second entrance has been removed.
Gotcha. So in that regards, how big a deal do you think it is having it come out to the southeast versus having it go out to the northeast?
Well, I know that there'll be pushback from the district as far as having it not being a remote entrance. There is a formula for, having a diagonal. You want to have it a remote. So if there's an issue at that one entrance, you can get in from a totally separate direction.
Right.
Just out of curiosity, where is the entrance in relationship to the fire department? Because the fire department's right there, isn't it?
Yeah. So north.
That's true, but to get into that building,
Right.
to fight a fire, if there's an accident at that one entrance, how do you get a fire truck in?
What if
You need
we
more
go
support?
right from the fire hall?
Yeah, I was thinking that.
Well, yeah,
I think you'd have to go.
put a direct road right there. It'd be fine.
I think it would be right through Mike Heading's property, wouldn't it?
No,
If you did
no,
that now? It's not far enough.
Don't think
well,
so.
it might
I was gonna fill in the pond, so.
you might be right. It might be the very back
Yeah,
of his
because he's by
parcel.
the post office, right?
Yeah.
The fire department's right there with the post office. So you
We may need his pond for, to draft water, to fight a fire.
on his pond, we'll build a bridge over it or something.
Right. No, you're right. He does extend to the back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we'll take a look at it, planning board, if it gets approved here, so.
You're not touring.
Yeah, like I said, I just have a fear of trucks going out that way.
Right, well, they could put a crash gate at both ends of it.
Okay.
It'd be more like a forest view second entrance, same deal.
Do you want me to reach out to Mark Cholak, or do you want to do that, or what do you think?
Oh, no, well, I can do that tomorrow.
Okay, appreciate that.
And I'll show these plans to Rich tomorrow as well.
Right.
He'll concur with me, so code's pretty clear on your requirements.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks.
We lost Mike.
Mike's
Okay.
gone.
He wanted the first
There he is.
resolution. That's me, isn't it? I'm talking to myself. I have the first resolution.
Yeah, you get it.
Speaking of which, I should probably bring that packet up.
I almost feel like I have to pledge allegiance to the flag again.
I know. Okay, we are ready to resume. Can I get my first resolution?
Yes, sir. Supervisor Schultz and fellow board members, I have resolution 4-40, 2021 to authorize bills payable for February 12th, 2021 through today.
Second.
Any discussion? Anything online? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolzner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye, I'm going to interject. I did have one comment. The $13 million manual check, that was the tax payment,
For the fire
the
district.
collection from the fire district.
Yeah, that was a
So
big one.
That 13 million wasn't to the town, it was to the fire district. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
Mr. Supervisor, fellow town board members, I have Resolution 4-41, 2021, to create the Local Waterfront Revitalization Program, LWRP, Waterfront Advisory Committee.
Seconded.
So as a reminder, we'd received a grant to create a local waterfront revitalization program plan. We went in with it multi-jurisdictional with Rush. We are the sole applicant, but in it, we indicated that up to 30% of the projects could be done in Rush. We've been working with the Rush Town Supervisor and the Rush Town Board, as well as the stakeholders along the river. Most of the work is going to be along the river, although there are one or two potential projects along the canal. For those who might not be aware, the canal does go through Henrietta at the very northeast corner. So we're working, and that's why you'll see a member from the JCC is on the committee, because they're, again, a local stakeholder right on the canal, so. Any comments, questions? Anything online? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford, Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolzner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz and fellow board members, I have resolution number 4-42, 2021, to call for a public hearing regarding the establishment of extension number 24 to the Henrietta Drainage District for Forest View subdivision.
Second.
Any discussion? Anything online? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, I have Resolution 4-43, 2021, to call for a public hearing regarding the establishment of extension number 223 of the Henrietta Sewer Water District 1 for Forest Hills View subdivision.
Second, I'll open comments by noting that I am exploring the possibility of there is a sewer district 170, I believe is the number, that this is connecting to, and that 170 bore the cost of putting in a pump station and a force main that this will be connecting to. We are exploring the possibility of, we've broken out that cost from the total project to put in all the sewer mains, and would look to spread the cost of that pump station, the remaining cost of that pump station and force main across not just 170, but across 223 as well. We're exploring how to do that, but to me, basically at this point forward, while that bond is still being paid off, these residents are gaining the benefit of that infrastructure that was put in place. It seems to me that these residents should also share in the cost along with the residents of extension 170.
Makes sense.
Any other comments or questions?
I just see that there's 3 public hearings for sewer districts in the Forest View subdivision. Will those all be joined together, or will those be 3 separate hearings?
It's one hearing to cover the
3 topics.
right. It's basically a water district, drainage district, and sewer district.
Okay.
So they're all at the same time because it's essentially all covering the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Anything online? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford.
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Fellow board members, I have resolution 4-44, 2021 to call for a public hearing. Proposed establishment of extension number 170 Forest View subdivision to Henrietta Water District number 1.
Second.
I'll note that 170 is just coincidentally the same number as the sewer extension 170 that I was just talking about. Just coincidental. Any questions, comments? So again, this is the third one. It'll all be the one public hearing covering all 3 topics. Any comments online? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford.
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Fellow board members, I have a resolution 4-45, 2021 to authorize installation of stop signs, both southbound and eastbound on Wiregrass Park at Lehigh Station Road and John Street.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford.
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor, fellow town board members, I have resolution 4-46, 2021 to authorize the purchase of a sidewalk plow for the drainage department.
Seconded.
Any discussion? Anything online? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz, I have resolution number 4-47, 2021 to adopt a public employer health emergency plan for the town of Henrietta.
Second.
I'll open discussion noting that the union has reviewed this, has signed off on it. Their comment was just that the promulgation, I'm going to get it wrong, that basically doesn't supersede our commitments in the union contract. So I may not have stated that exactly correctly, but I just wanted to get that on the public record for our union. Any other comments? Anything online? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, I have Resolution 4-48, 2021 to adopt the revised 2021 Park and Recreation Department fee schedule.
Second. So as I noted at the workshop meeting a year ago, we had approved some increases to take effect with COVID, with a number of other things that we were informed that would be a hardship. And so we decided to roll back those increases. So they're back to the original levels.
Very thoughtful and probably needed.
Any other questions, comments? Anything online? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Fellow board members, I have resolution 4-49, 2021 to appoint Tyler J. Keller to the Historic Site Committee.
Second.
And I just realized with all the long public hearing yesterday, or excuse me, neighborhood meeting, I never got the chance to call the other members. So I apologize to anyone who has just learned that they were not our selection. I intended to call you yesterday, but the neighborhood committee, their meeting went very long. You probably wouldn't have appreciated me calling you when I got home. Congratulations to Tyler. Again, we have 4 very strong candidates, each with bring a different set of skills. It was a tough decision. One of the things they looked at is that Tyler brings some skills that there wasn't really present on the board. The other thing they wanted me to make note when I call those individuals, and I will still intend to call them, but if you're listening to it now, they encourage you to stay involved. They note that there, often as people's schedules change, openings occur, and that they would love to have a number of you on the board and or again helping out on various projects, because every single one of the candidates that we interviewed were really strong and had a lot to offer to the Historic Site Committee. Lisa, I don't know if you want to add anything because you were a part of that as well.
Absolutely. We were very impressed with all 4 candidates, and there's a lot of work ahead of the Historical Site Committee. So I know in talking to the committee members, they would really appreciate if you want to stay and help with a bunch of the projects. We do, there may be some positions. I believe there's 2 up at the end of the year. So stick around and help out. It's a really great group, and they're really, their hearts are really into the Historical Site Committee. So, and keeping the historic properties in Henrietta. So we would love to have you join us. Not as a board member, but as a worker.
Anything else? Any other comments? Anything online? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Fellow board members, I have Resolution 4-50, 2021, to call a public hearing to consider designating 5582 West Henrietta Road as an historic site.
Mhm.
Any discussion? So this is the property Mike Heading was actually here.
This is actually.
Oh, I'm sorry, this is a different one.
Yeah.
This is, sorry, so this is the one next door to Mike's.
Mhm.
Mike's was last meeting where we did the notice, the letter going out to the, it was getting on the state and federal registry. So this one is the Horizon Group. He spoke at the December meeting.
Right. It's a gorgeous building.
It is. Once COVID clears, I encourage people to go take a tour of the facility. It's neat, including, you know, the entrance for the Underground Railroad Tunnel.
Oh, wow.
I was gonna go see it, but then COVID hit.
Yep. Any other discussion? Anything online? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford.
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolster,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor, fellow town board members, I have Resolution 4-51, 2021, to make appropriate budget transfers per the 2020 adopted budget.
Seconded.
Any discussion? Anything online? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Oh, golly, sorry. Supervisor Schultz and fellow board members, I have resolution number 4-52, 2021, to hire personnel and make the attached changes.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek.
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Hold on one second before you post this one. Craig, were you able to find a vehicle for the sewer truck, or they all didn't have the? Okay. Okay. So we were just checking, we were trying a bunch of avenues the last minute to see if there were any purchase vehicles that we could piggyback off of. Unfortunately, there weren't. So one of the things I did do, we changed ours so that other towns will be able to piggyback off of ours. I'm going to encourage other towns to start doing that in the Monroe County Supervisors Association meeting. I figure if I'm going to ask others to do it, we should lead the way. And so what this allows them to do is if they're buying this exact same vehicle, and there's typically a certain amount of time in that the person, the respondent still has to honor that price, but it saves them from the time of having to go out to bids, go through the exact same process we've gone through. And so
The Irondequoit one, we're not using that? We couldn't use it.
we can't because of the way they didn't allow piggybacking.
Okay.
And so in years past, apparently you didn't need to have specific language in there, or there was a looser interpretation or something, but
Gotcha.
now it's been pretty clear that you have to include under the purchase regulations, it has to allow for piggybacking, and there's a number of things that have to be in there.
Okay.
So I've asked Don to help us make sure that ours is compliant so that
that's
others
great.
will be able to piggyback off of it.
Great idea.
Now I'll read it.
Okay, go ahead.
Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, I have Resolution 4-53, 2021, to authorize the advertisement of bids for the purchase of a replacement sewer camera inspection van.
Second. So all that stuff I just discussed, pretend that was just said now. You know, so like I said, it's one of these things that if somebody's gone through all the effort already recently of doing the bid and getting the competitive prices, it just allows others to not have to go through that same duplicative effort.
And
Go ahead, Don.
yeah, just the main thing we need to make sure we do is when we actually sign the contract, there's some provision in there that says, you know, we allow piggybacking based on this price or however we're setting it up. And probably with a time limitation. I'm sure the vendor doesn't want to let it sit out there forever.
Right. Sounds good. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. That concludes our resolutions. Do we have any public discussion? Additional discussion items either from the board or from the public? Anything online? Do we have any committee or miscellaneous reports?
I was just going to say with the Historical Site Committee, they're looking for any old pictures that people have of anything that's happened in the past to put on their Facebook website. So if you have anything, you can either send it to the Historical Village of East Henrietta, the Historical Village of West Henrietta, or the Henrietta Historical Society. If you have old photos, maps, anything, they love that, just to put it on the website. And the library, just watch what's online, what's going on with the library. I'll keep it short, 9:30 at night.
The school district is in the middle of their budget process, and so look for information. They are planning on holding their town board's budget presentation this year, so hopefully we'll be getting some more information about that in the coming weeks.
Great.
From the rec center, registration for adult softball is now open. You can call Craig over at the rec center. The outdoor Easter Bunny egg craze will be held on March 27th and 28th. It'll be held over at the gazebo near the senior center. Anybody who wants to sign up can call the rec department there. And then finally, Food Link will be holding their drive again on March 11th, and registration is now open, and I'm sure they're looking for volunteers.
And I will note that they've changed the hours. They've shortened the hours because the last half hour was largely empty. So it only runs from 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. So if you are one of the late stragglers, don't be. Get there before 11:30. And, you know, again, that's at Veterans Memorial Park. Your best bet is to go to foodlinkny.org/distributions. You can call 211, but everybody has pretty much said that the website is much more efficient for signing up than the 211. Do you have any from your committees, Rob?
No, nothing. Nothing at all.
And I think I've already said mine. So, Craig?
That microphone isn't on.
You're right. Thank you, Becky. Is that better? That's twice.
It's way better. Thank you.
Under the supervisor's direction, I've been working really well with climate smart communities. We have a group organization called Color Henrietta Green that wants to be more involved. I've been communicating with them pretty regularly and actually looking at more grant opportunities that they might be able to provide. They've requested to come chat at the next workshop in March. So we're going to put them on the agenda to come let them talk to you and give an idea of what they're trying to do in the community in general. But one of the other things is communicating with me on some of the other avenues and grants that we have to be able to move some of that stuff forward. So I just wanted to make you aware of that and what they're going to be coming to talk about. But some of the other grants, including extra EV car chargers and stuff like that, that we're trying to procure.
In addition, Craig has started to rekindle the LED street light replacement program. So we've got a couple. We're getting updates from the vendors as to what their various programs are. the nice thing is that the Color Henrietta Green folks might give us some volunteers to help us with those efforts.
Fantastic.
Okay,
Great.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Hearing none, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Hearing no objections, meeting adjourned.